Okay. So, let's do this again. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Markowsky. Welcome to my studio. Today we are going to be recreating another painting by another one of my all-time very favorite artists. Today's artist is particularly meaningful to me because he's been a huge inspiration for me. And I even sort of convinced my wife to go down to Mexico for our honeymoon. Amongst other things, one of the main reasons is because I really wanted to go see some of his greatest works in person. Because of, again, I'm a huge fan of today's artist. We're going to look at the art of Diego Rivera today, and this is the painting that we're going to be painting. The portrait of Ignacio Sanchez, which is this little boy wearing a sombrero and dressed in overalls and standing on a mat on a tiled floor. And this is one of his most popular images for people to buy prints of online. Even though this is in a private collection, if you look up Diego Rivera and you want to get a print or a poster of his, this is one of the first things that always comes up. And we're going to look at his work here in a moment, and you're going to see that the vast majority of his work is very big because he's known as a muralist painter for painting giant murals. And this is a much smaller painting that's maybe about this so-and-so big. So it's a little bit different than things that he's known for, I would suppose, I guess. Some of his most famous large murals. But I thought it was sort of something that was achievable for us to do in a reasonable amount of time, and is, I think, a really beautiful, humble painting. Many people sort of described this sort of child as having a kind of a wisdom beyond his years, that he is both like a child and kind of an old man. The way that his hands are sort of clasped and standing there in this sort of relatively confident kind of posture. And yeah, I've just always been kind of attracted to this image, and it keeps popping up, and I thought, well, you know, compared to some of the other images that we could do, this one is a pretty accessible kind of thing. So there is an outline that I've done that you can print out onto regular photocopy paper on your computer at home, or printer at home, or your photocopy printer at work, or wherever. And we're going to transfer it onto a canvas in just a second. So let me show you how to find this image here. I just cleaned the table with a new cleaner that's supposed to be super environmentally friendly and low toxic, and it's like my sort of mat here is now quite sticky, so I think it took some of the finish off. Anyway, let's get to the matter at hand. And you'll see there's a link to a Dropbox folder in the description below. And if you scroll through this, here's all of the great master artists that we've already covered throughout this series. Man, these are heavy hitters from all kinds of different backgrounds, people who are pop culture like Batman, Star Wars, as well as, you know, some of the great artists of the past like Goya, Ken Danby, a famous painting of a goaltender, Tom Thompson, Vincent van Gogh. We did a whole week on Van Gogh, and we got a whole week of Picasso coming up. So lots of great stuff to keep you busy. Grandma Moses here. So today's episode is sort of a part of a series of episodes that I've been doing focusing on the art of Latin America. And we're going to Mexico today to look at Diego Rivera. You're going to see in this folder, I don't know how many files are in here, but a couple of them are for tomorrow's episode, where we're going to be painting another one of his all-time most famous works. In fact, I'll bring that up. We're going to be painting this painting tomorrow, and this is this is a detail from one of his most famous paintings, the Sunday Afternoon in Alameda Park, which is a giant mural in Alameda Park in Mexico City that I've seen in person. This, I've actually just sort of isolated the three primary figures in the center. This is Diego Rivera as a child, his wife Frida Kahlo, and this famous figure that we'll talk about all this tomorrow. Anyway, so you'll see this image in the Dropbox. You'll see this image in the Dropbox. You'll also see, just for fun, I've included another painting, which is, you know, could be seen as like a companion to today's painting. I'm not going to paint it today, but if you're interested in a little bit of extra work for bonus points, you're welcome to tackle this one as well. So, just before I move on here, I just want to let you know that there's a private Facebook group just for people who are watching, and join the Facebook group. The link is, I think, the first thing in the description below, and you will see that there's, I love this painting Heidi did, based on some of the lessons that we've been doing. This is a piece that she's created completely on her own, and I just think it's fantastic. This is a surprise gift for a friend of hers, and I'm so proud of her for what an achievement. Anyway, lots of people are doing similar things just like that and uploading their artwork here, and then once a month we take I dedicate an episode to looking at the work, giving people feedback, and celebrating people's individual achievements, as well as the community that we've created together, which has happened totally organically, and I'm super touched to be a part of it. So let's just briefly let's get this painting started, and then I'll come back and talk about Diego Rivera's life. As I'm a huge fan. So I could talk endlessly about it, so I'm afraid I will. So before I start talking endlessly about it, let's get the painting started here. So what we're looking at here is a canvas, a 9x12 sized canvas. These I order off of Amazon. I like them better than the cheap ones I was getting from the dollar store. I think there's probably either like a really compressed cardboard inside or MDF wood. And then I've taken some gesso and put it over top. So I took some gesso the other day and I just brushed it over top of the surface after I took it out of the plastic. And that gesso, which you can buy at any art supply store, an acrylic gesso, and you can see, then I just put it on some newspaper, let it dry overnight, and of course it sort of bleeds over the edge, and some of this newsprint kind of, that's what's on the back. But I actually like that because it lets me know when I've got stacks of these and I can't remember which ones have been gessoed and which ones haven't. That's a pretty good sign to me, like, oh yeah, okay, this one definitely has got gesso on it, because it wouldn't come like that straight from the package, right? I'm going to take a 100 grit sandpaper here and just give it a quick sanding. Some of this off the sides, that newsprint. Okay, that's great. Okay, and I'm just taking a little bit of that sandpaper off the edges, because that's the kind of thing that I like to pick on, and I don't want to be picking on it afterwards, after it's dry, and then I'm peeling part of the paint off. So that was a 100 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to do a quick sanding with 220. Ooh, nice and smooth. So that's the purpose of putting the gesso and then sanding it down, is I can get like a nice smooth surface to paint on. I love a smooth surface to paint on. Some people don't, so it's totally up to you. If you want to go that extra little step there to get a really nice prepped canvas. So, and I'll just sit here all day and feel this. If okay, so let's put this here. I'm going to move it down just a little bit. Kind of a rule of thumb is you generally want just literally, like, here's my rule of thumb, you know, a little bit more room at the top than at the bottom when you've got a portrait. You know, for many different reasons, I kind of think about it as, if you're going to get it framed and you have an even frame all the way around the painting, then what can happen is, if the frame comes out a little bit, it's going to cast a shadow onto the top part of the painting, whereas the bottom will be fully lit. And therefore, even though there might be it framed evenly all around, the shadow might kind of give it the illusion that it's actually higher in the frame. You know, I used to be a framer. I used to build my own custom frames for many years. So I'm just looking. I guess the horizon line isn't straight, so it's not exactly centered. Yeah, I'm just gonna move it over a little bit here. Just because, especially, he's looking off to the right a little bit. If in doubt, you want to leave a little bit more room on the side that the person's looking into, because this area here is kind of dead space. So anyway, now that's a little bit high, so I'm gonna move it back up. I know it seems like I'm spending a lot of time at the beginning doing this, but once you've got these lines down, you're committed to the painting, right? It's not like you're gonna move the image over afterwards, right? So these images are really to help you get the painting started, as we're doing here. So I'm not going to draw all the lines on here. I'm going to draw the most important ones, and there's not that many lines on here, so it's going to take me about 5 minutes tops. Okay, so very quiet stream tonight. Hopefully there's no problems with the tech. I did have a little bit of an issue getting started tonight, but I don't see any comments in the chat, so hopefully the video's streaming properly and everyone can hear and see me. And as technology always seems to have a tiny little glitch every once in a while, so if anyone wants to just let me know that they can hear my voice and see me, and that this is actually happening, and I'm not asleep and about to wake up in a cold sweat and realize that I'm late for tonight's episode or something, and this is all a nightmare, which is entirely possible. Just going to move that down here. And I'm just using a red pencil, that way I can see which lines I've traced and which ones I haven't yet traced. If you do this with like a black pen, you might get kind of confused as to which lines are there or not there yet. So, oh, good. I see a few people chiming in the chat. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Paula. Okay. Good to see some familiar faces and names following along today. So, let's do a different color. Maybe red is just not my day. Maybe it's a blue day. Blue Thursday. Okay. I guess I will be doing most of the lines on here. Often I skip a whole bunch of lines because they're just not, I'm going to ignore most of them, or they're all going to get painted out. But This one looks like we'll get most of them on. Okay, and the last here, right, everything's, I mean, you could put a baseball hat on him if you wanted. We'll get his big hat on here. Okay. So, move all this away. And I've got a big stack of these sheets that I've been keeping, so our daughter can doodle on them. And there's, you know, it's kind of fun because she can draw on it. I don't care. They were going to go in the recycling anyway, but now there's kind of a cool image that she could maybe do something really fun on a, you know, on a original artwork by a famous artist. Okay. I'm going to apply some warm yellow onto the canvas here. This is the same warm yellow that I'll use throughout the episode. I'm just, I squeeze out all the extra into these containers at the end of a tube of paint rather than throwing out a tube of paint with just that little bit extra. It builds up and I can end up using it, so. Okay. So I had the baby camera on there and the audio on in case there was sort of like, it sounded like you were in a spaceship orbiting the moon. It's like, it's the sound of her noise machine in there, which is awesome. That noise machine, as soon as our daughter is old enough to get rid of it, it's going to go in our bedroom because I love it. I love listening. It's such a great way of to help us fall asleep. So it just has that white noise thing, and it really does work. Kind of just gives this sort of flat noise that is kind of just loud enough to drown out the sounds of people walking by in the middle of the night making loud noises, or cars honking down the road, sirens and everything. Or maybe I don't need it, because when our daughter was sleeping in our bedroom and that thing was on, I found it quite hard to wake up. I would just sleep in right through my alarm even. Okay. So, there's the painting itself. I'm just going to wipe this excess paint off the brush and then give it a little rinse in the water. Joshua says, "Hey Markowsky, I don't know if this is a good idea to tell this, but I want to admit my age since I want to say it, but I think it's been too long. I'm the ripe age of 14 years and I like to paint a lot." That's great. Thanks for sharing your age with us, Joshua. Actually, it was my birthday yesterday. I turned 44. Yes, I think it's 44 yesterday. So, we share the same last number of our age. And also, yesterday was the anniversary of having begun this whole painting live stream series. So over the past year, we have done 129 paintings, at least 2 paintings each week over 52 weeks. And so, you know, that would be 104 paintings. So we've done an extra 28 or whatever. Anyway, I'm not good at math, but we've got what's that? 124, 100. We've done an extra 25 paintings over the course of that time as well. So for me, that's very satisfying to have made it through an entire year of painting regularly like this, week after week after week, and keeping on schedule. And it's been a really great routine for me personally. So thank you all those who've been here following me week after week as well, because I know there's a bunch of you that have been here every day. Anyway, thanks Maria for the birthday wishes. So we'll let this dry for a few minutes. Maybe while it's drying now, let's just take a quick detour and talk a little bit about this fascinating artist. You can see, look at this long name here, but obviously just known as Diego Rivera to his friends and to the general public. He was born in 1886, which I think, you know, is around the same age and birthday as like Picasso. I think Picasso's 1889, Tom Thompson's 1887, I think. So just to give you an idea of his, you know, the period in which he lived. We'll talk about Picasso a few times here, because I really do think Picasso is about the closest person that I can think of that Diego reminds me of. Diego Rivera and Pablo Picasso were both characters who were larger than life. Diego Rivera was also a pretty big guy physically, became quite rotund, and he was quite tall, an imposing figure, and had a gigantic ego, just like Pablo Picasso, right? It's pretty hard to rival the ego of Picasso, but Diego Rivera gave him a run for his money. They knew each other. They were, I don't know if they were friends, but they would have met a number of times in Paris in the early part of the, well, around the 1915, somewhere around there. They lived in the same area, Montparnasse, which is you know, famous for at the turn of the last century there was a whole bunch of art studios there. It was cheap rent. There was kind of a red light district around there. That's where the Moulin Rouge was, the famous windmill, and the can-can dancers. So it was sort of like a shadier part of town, and artists often move to those areas of town because the rent is cheap, and so they can work and live without having to work at a real job as much as possible, so they can devote themselves to making their art. So, what do I want to say about Diego Rivera? As I said, he's primarily known for his murals. We'll check out some of his murals here in a second. He did murals all across primarily in like New York, San Francisco, all over Mexico, but really mostly in Mexico City, and some very big ones in Detroit as well. Because as he became more and more famous, very wealthy people in the United States, like the Rockefellers, were hiring him to come to various different places in the United States and paint these giant murals. Rivera was known as, he became heavily involved in the Communist Party at the time, which is not unusual for artists at the turn of the last century. A lot of artists got into the communist movement, I think because communism was kind of a new thing. It was this revolutionary move. There was a lot of revolutionary movements happening at the time, including Mexico had a revolution in 1910, and you know, artists kind of gravitate to that kind of chaotic energy and excitement. And also, communism, at least when it began, was very favorable to the arts. Some of the most avant-garde, daring artists were Russian artists. and were supported and encouraged by Lenin and some of the early people in the Communist Party. Of course, that changed quite radically, and art under Soviet communism, you know, by the 40s and 50s was about as bland and boring as possible, and and is totally forgettable today. Like, basically all of those artists that dedicated their lives towards making art during Stalin's time, for instance, are completely forgotten. I mean, well, I'm sure there's some people that remember them, but they're certainly not more widely appreciated outside of Russia, for sure. Anyway, as I said, like, one of his great friends, Amedeo Mondigliani, was a friend of his in Paris, in Montparnasse. Another thing with Diego Rivera that is a lot like Pablo Picasso is he married 5 times, but he married Frida Kahlo as his third wife. They were married. I got married, I think, 1929, or yeah, married 1929. Right here we are. He was 42, she was 22, 20 years older, basically twice her age. There was a very tumultuous relationship, which is documented in the excellent movie Frida. If you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend it. They were both cheating on each other, and it was just a complete mess. I think they were madly in love with one another, but they were just very eccentric people and could not stay faithful to one another, and that just led to all sorts of issues and problems and famous arguments, huge blow-ups and fights, and then passionate reuniting. And I mean, they got divorced in 1939, and then they remarried the following year, right? And stayed together until she died 15 yeyears later in 1955, and then he subsequently married somebody else. Or no, okay, I'm not sure. I thought they were married right to the end. Anyway, well, they were very good friends right until the end. I think there was a kind of a mutual understanding among them. So I'm not exactly sure the timeline of their marriage, but anyway. One of the things, I think there's an interesting, I don't know if it's in here, story about him when he was a child growing up. He was actually born a twin. His twin brother died at age 2, which sort of reminds me a little bit of Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley famously was a twin. His twin brother died, I think, shortly after childbirth, and it haunted Elvis for his whole life. I didn't think I'd be talking about Elvis today, but so famously, you know, I would imagine that also played some sort of role in his life as well. He would draw and paint on the walls of his house when he was a child, to the point where his parents, rather than scolding him, they painted chalkboard paint all over the walls so that he could draw all over the walls of their house. They subsequently sent him to Europe, I think at age 17, 18, to study painting in Paris. So he was there in 1907, I think he gets there, and falls right in with the avant-garde painters. And he falls into this circle of Picasso and Braque, who go on to form Cubism. And Rivera is right there on the ground floor at the beginning of that movement and does some Cubist paintings. We'll take a very brief look at that here in a moment. You know, it's interesting, this whole the Mexican Revolution, if I recall, happened while he was away, which would have been you know, that would have been a weird thing, to be on the other side of the planet and your whole country descends into this very chaotic revolution. I think he wrote, actually, I should mention this right off the bat. I read this book years ago twice, right after finishing. I read it again. It's a great book about his life, his autobiography, My Art, My Life. You can see, here's the image that we're going to paint tomorrow. This is the full, well, there's still 10 times the amount on either side, but obviously I've cut out, this guy here is actually the illustrator who came up with this image. Excellent autobiography. It's also kind of him, he brags about all of his achievements and romantic conquests, and he did have a very dramatic life. It's just that he is very proud of everything that he accomplished, and he sort of puts himself at the center of things, which is not not unusual, but you know, there was a lot of like these major historical events happening, and he did happen to be sort of in the middle, or you know, or the fringes of a lot of that. And you know, the way I sort of think about it is he became a massive celebrity, just like Picasso. Like, an argument could be made that Picasso and Rivera would probably be the most famous artists during their lifetimes. There were other artists who were famous for their artwork, like Matisse or Modigliani, but you know, Rivera and Picasso were the kind of people that they themselves were massive celebrities. Like, if they walked into a room, like, everyone would turn and stop and look. Rivera, particularly because he was such a big guy, that you would see him walking into the room, and he was big and loud and had a big laugh, and you know. So anyway, let's take a look at these paintings here just really quickly. I mean, we're not gonna. This is all in the description below if you want to just take a look at some of. Like these here, these are all giant murals that he did. Like, let's see, this one here. This is a huge mural at the. I'm sorry, I don't know the name. It's like the art museum in Mexico City. Which actually he painted this originally at Rockefeller Center in New York City. I mentioned this briefly the other day. He painted a version of this in Rockefeller Center. If you've ever gone to see Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show, or Conan O'Brien, or David Letterman, which I've seen when I was living in New York, I went and saw the tapings of those shows, or Saturday Night Live, they all film in Rockefeller Plaza in Midtown Manhattan. And so Diego Rivera was commissioned by Rockefeller to go to New York to paint this painting. I can't, and it doesn't, I won't let me zoom in anymore here, but when Rockefeller came downstairs and saw that right here, this is a portrait of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Soviet Revolution. Needless to say, Rockefeller, who is basically the symbol of capitalism, was not so happy that Rivera painted the symbol of communism on his wall. So he had it covered over, painted right over, and he paid him up and said, "Thanks very much, get out of my building." I don't know why Rockefeller was surprised that Rivera would do that, but it is funny. So anyway, of course, Rivera, when he got home, he had all of the sketches already done, so he just redid it inside this giant art museum in Mexico City. Let's see. Won't it let me go back to some of these paintings? Here's that other painting that I've included. This is a really cool artwork too. This is in the sort of what would you call it, building, the water treatment plant in Mexico City. He did all these murals that would normally be covered up to about this area with water for all, you know, for the public water system. And he did this mural inside this containment tank, and you can go in and you can see it. Of course, now because this mural is so important, they've relocated, and so they don't actually flood it with water anymore. It's a protected site. But he was a machine, just constantly creating more and more artwork. And the scale of some of those pieces, he would have people helping him do these, but he did a lot of the finishing work himself. And it's you think about the fact that this is not a small man. He was a big guy. You know, he's muscular. Like, you know, if you think of like a big football player, like this big, strong guy with a big belly, big loud voice. For him to be climbing up and down these scaffolds is no small feat, right? So he enjoyed himself. He ate a lot of food, drank a lot, but was also in relatively good physical fitness in order to be climbing up and down ladders all day long, every day for 40 years plus, right? Okay, so let's jump into the painting itself, and we'll talk maybe more about his career as we go. I could just talk endlessly about him. So how are we going to do this painting here? Let's take one more look. Basically, what we're going to start out by doing is painting the background and then working our way to the foreground. Now, there's lots of different ways we can do this. So I think, as I think aloud to myself, let's put some paint on the canvas. And yeah, what's the best way to today I'd sort of like to try to make this painting in like as efficiently as possible. Rivera, because he painted these murals, and he painted the murals in a fairly traditional way, using painting on wet plaster, which is the exact same way that Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, using the fresco method of mural painting. And the fresco method involves applying patches of wet plaster onto a wall, and while that plaster is still wet, you're painting into the wet plaster. And what ends up happening is it creates, basically the paint bonds with the plaster and creates a really nice, strong, like it really sticks to the wall very, very well. And so that's a strategy artists have used for a long time, because otherwise you end up with situations like Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, which Leonardo, ever the inventor and innovator, was always trying to reinvent the wheel. And even though people had been painting murals for centuries using the fresco method, he was like, I got a different way. I'm going to figure a new way of doing this. And so Leonardo tried to paint the Last Supper in a new and innovative way, which caused the painting to start flaking and peeling off the wall while he was painting on it. So we see the Last Supper today, and it's almost completely gone. There's very little of the original image that's still there. It's like this, it's very faded, and you basically have to stand in front of it with like a map or a drawing and look at it and be like, I guess I can kind of see that there, right? So that's an example. Leonardo's an example of someone who did not use the fresco method, or at least in Last Supper, and we can see how poorly that painting survived, versus the Sistine Chapel, which was painted at roughly the same time by, well, I think it was painted actually even earlier than the Last Supper, by Michelangelo, and it is still survived, not in 100% intact, but it certainly aged far better than the Last Supper. And so Diego Rivera used that same painting technique to do his murals. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because that method of painting, fresco painting, you have to paint fast. So for instance, what you would do if this was a mural, and you could paint murals on the floor or the ceiling and on the walls, just like I showed that image of Diego Rivera painting on the water system pool, right? If this was a mural, this is a wall that you want to paint on, what you would do is you would take some, in fact I have plaster. Alright, so you have like, you take your plaster of Paris, you mix it up into a batch, and then you've got your trowel, and you sort of quickly apply it to the wall, and then you've got to very frantically paint into that wet plaster before the plaster dries. And you know, well, if you've ever used plaster, plaster will dry in like literally, depending on how thick you put it on there, maybe in 5-10 minutes, right? Of course, it'll take, you know, overnight to dry, to fully harden, but it does, you know, if you're an artist, you've got to, like, there's no, like, once you've got that plaster on, it is game on. And so artists would sort of, let's say if I was to do this as a fresco, I would sort of break it down into shapes. So I would put some, I would try to, anyway, I might maybe paint this section here around this part, right? And then I would paint maybe the body. So you'd paint in these sort of chunks, and you do this as quickly as possible before it dries. So in my mind, I'm thinking we could just paint this painting as we've painted every other painting, or I could try to paint it as quickly as possible to get the fresco technique done. This is not a fresco, this is a painting on canvas. But anyway, this long story short, I'm just saying that Diego Rivera, because he painted fast on frescoes, he could also execute paintings on canvas very quickly. He was just like literally a master of his craft. So the other thing too, as I'm just thinking about this, this painting is probably painted on a white canvas, and obviously we've painted my typical, almost trademark by this point, warm yellow. So that is a little bit of a different thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you could have just used white on here, but I'm also, as I do these, I'm thinking larger, like, well, that's a conversation we'll have, because I'm putting together a book based on the techniques I've been describing. So my own selfish thing is, like, I want to be able to show people you can paint any painting with a kind of color like this. So anyway, blah blah blah, let's get painting. Okay, lots of things in the chat. So I'm gonna get some white here. Where should we do this? Yeah, I'll do this right here. So I'm taking my white, and I'm going to take some cold blue and mix this up here. I'll probably end up doing, I might do 2 coats of this. So I'm not really too concerned about making it a perfect batch here. I'll show you the original. So I'm just going to paint this in. This is just my cold blue and white. Okay. I'm painting this on actually pretty thick, so we'll see. I may not even need to do another coat. I won't know entirely until this dries. You've probably seen me in the past put multiple layers on these, but we'll see as this dries. Obviously it's much brighter than the original, but I was thinking maybe of glazing a little bit on top with a little bit more of a warmer blue on top here. Now we've definitely, this is a warm blue down here, but we also have a bit of warm color over top of this cool blue. So anyway, I'll just leave that for right now. The next step, I'm going to make a bit of a gray next. So let's take some warm red. That was a little bit too much red, so now I'm going to take some more blue. And now we've got this purple. I'm going to take some cool yellow and mix that into here. And that cool yellow, look how it just basically turned that purple into a gray. I love that. I think it's just like magic to me. Now the reason I'm making this is I just want to modify this color back here. And while I'm probably going to use mostly just cool yellow and white, I want to have a gray that I can use just to dull that color down a little bit. So I'm just going to wipe that excess off. Actually, maybe I'll... clean my brush. Where's my white paint? Okay. So let's take some of this white paint here and take some of my yellow. And then I'm just going to take a bit of this gray that I mixed here and just put this into this color. I'm going to paint this as, I was expecting it to be more white, so let's move this over here. A little bit, a little closer. Okay. I could change that later, but I'm just gonna say at the moment I actually don't. Well, we'll see, because sometimes I'm not gonna fiddle with my colors at this stage much. I just want to get my paint, just basically cover this painting as quickly as possible. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my gray that I mixed up here, and I'm just going to really quickly do these diagonal lines on the tiles. That way, when I cover this with some brown, I'll be able to see those lines. They won't get lost. And it's also possible that I'll be happy enough with the lines there that I won't even need to paint them in at all. Or I can put a very subtle color over top. Okay. And you know, maybe while I'm right here, let's do the same sort of thing with the eyes, or the face of Ignacio Sanchez. I'm going to do the fingers as well. I'll do toes. Okay. So I think that might be good enough. I'm putting any little lines anywhere where I'm about to cover areas with paint. That way it's going to come through the subsequent layers. You'll see here in a moment as we get into it. Okay, so lots of birthday wishes in the chat. I appreciate all that. Thank you, guys. So now I'm gonna let this area, rather than get the blow dryer out, let's just maybe move down to the. Let's paint. I was about to say. Let's skip this area, but I'm thinking I'll just paint it white right now. So, because it looks like that blue is kind of dry. So, let's look here. This arm, just paint a bit over that blue. It looks it's nice and dry already, which is awesome. And his shirt. Okay. I'm not even going to bother painting the whites of his eyes yet because I'm going to paint brown over there, and I don't even want to have to worry about painting around anything. How about let's mix another color for the sombrero. So this time I'm going to make a warm yellow, almost like a warm brown actually. So let's take, I was going to use my other palette but we'll just use this. So we'll take our warm yellow, some warm red, and warm blue. That's a lot, so I'll put it to the side. And blend that together. Actually, this color kind of works for his face, so I think I'm just going to use this right here. You can see why I painted those lines. How helpful that is, right? On the face. Notice I'm using just a big brush to do all of this. feet. Again, it's you can see that I'm not at all concerned about being inside the lines, painting inside the lines. I just want to get everything colored to begin with, and then we'll worry about the details. Okay. I'm even wondering, I was going to put some, you know what, I'm going to put a little bit of paint here off to the side, and I'm just going to add some more red into this color. And I'm going to use this to paint these tiles back here. Maybe it needs to be a bit more red. Okay. And let's get some more paint here. Yeah, I don't mind that. I really just want to create a bit of a difference between his skin color and the floor, so that there wasn't any confusion between them. And I don't mean that confusion that like somebody's going to mistake his skin for the floor, but just visually, compositionally, I want them to be different enough that they don't look like they're the same color, and just kind of, I want it to look like there's multiple colors in the painting, right? And we could do some fun stuff with glazes perhaps in there as well. Okay, moving right along here. Let's just get that excess paint off in case we want to use that for anything. Maria says, happy birthday, Michael, and we get the gift. Heidi says, happy birthday, Michael, another Virgo. I have a few Virgo best buddies these birthdays these few days. Paula says, happy birthday, Michael, younger every day. Joshua says, didn't the Germans bomb the church that Leonardo painted the Last Supper in, and it survived? I think actually it wasn't the Germans. I think it was the Allies who bombed the church in Milan. So that the Last Supper's in Milan. Milan was and still is like a major industrial center of Italy, and therefore during World War II, that's where a lot of the planes, Italian military was being constructed, so it made sense for the Allies to bomb it. Luckily, it survived. A bomb actually went right through the roof of the It's not a church. It was a, and not like a, what do they, like a friary, I think it's called, like a convent for priest kind of thing. And it was in the kind of the dining area where all of the priests that were studying would gather to eat, and anyway, the bomb fell right in the middle, destroyed the ceiling, but the painting itself survived. Now, they would also they put things against the wall, so if there was a blast, it would capture some of that impact. But if it was, certainly if a bomb had landed in there, certainly would not have lasted. Anyway, okay, so what should we do? Yeah, I was going to do the sombrero, so let's do that sombrero. I'm going to take some of this white here. And what's the color we want? It's a little bit soft, so let's get a little bit more paint. Warm yellow on here. Okay. I missed this part of his face there with brown. I'll have to go back and see if I can fix that. Gonna turn this around for my own convenience. I'm probably going to do a little bit of outlining as he did, so I'm not too concerned with it kind of overlapping the blue of the background or the blue overlapping the sombrero. Now I'm going to add a little bit more nuance with some more warm yellow on there eventually, but that'll come. So let's put some more white in here. We'll do the matte, or sorry, more warm yellow and white down here. And I'm going to kind of, like this looks like, I think it's a matte anyway, right? I'm gonna add some more nuance to it later again as well. So my point is not to get this perfect right now, because this matte, as most mattes are, can get kind of dirty, and I think that's, you got this little bit worn kind of surface, so we'll get that in there. Cool. So this isn't too far off to how one way to paint with fresco method is we could also let this dry, and then once the paint is bonded into the plaster, you can do a little bit of work into the paint that's on the top of the plaster. So ideally you want to do it all at once. Donna got her second vaccine today. That's exciting. Good news. The more of us that get vaccinated, the sooner we'll be able to return to normal, right? Well done. Okay. What should we do? I guess we've got the blue clothes, the blue pants next. Let's paint that. Let's go to a smaller brush now. I'm going to add, let's do this. I'll take this white right here. I'm adding a little bit of white into this blue. I can darken it down later on, but I think it'll work well with a little bit of white in here. So once we get this done, basically you could say that this would be your underpainting having been completed. And then from there you could take a break, or you could continue painting on it, as I will. But from here, we're going to get we'll slow down a little bit and kind of dig into some of the details of the painting. Let's see, there's this. Oops, sorry. Should have left that on so you can compare. Diego Rivera also, you know, the kind of system I use with warm and cool colors. Diego Rivera is all about it. So he uses those kind of color oppositions to create depth in his paintings, because sometimes his paintings are relatively shallow, like there's many people kind of piled up on top of one another in these big group scenes, and in order to kind of, they're almost like low relief sculpture, in the sense that there's just so they occupy very similar space right next to one another. So he uses some much colder colors in the background to create some separation between them and have very distinct spaces in behind. So the reason why I'm putting this warm blue with white right all over here is that if I just tried to paint this dark blue right over top of my warm yellow, it's gonna look really kind of like black. It's not gonna have a very particularly rich color. So and I want really nice bright glowing colors. So that's why I'm using a bit of white in these first few layers here to ground it properly. So I'm just going to take a bit of this is, remember I set a little bit of this color aside so that I could do the floor. Well, here's a little, this is another reason why I kind of missed that side of his face. Now it does look a little bit, it's a little obvious there, so that means I'll probably do another quick layer of paint there. It's not ideal, but I wasn't paying close enough attention, so that's what kind of happened. Deborah says, this is such a beautiful painting to do on your birthday. Many blessings to you. Thank you very much, Deborah. I appreciate that. Let's just, I'll compare these two side by side here. What's going on here? Sorry. Move that camera. And now it's over here. What's going on? Everything's moving around, shifting today. That's okay. Okay. So we'll let this dry for a few minutes. And let's take a sip of tea. I got dueling teas. Old tea and new tea. So, what should the next step be? Well, again, this is a great, if you were going to stop for today, this would be a great place to stop. If you could get to this point, then I think you're doing well. I just noticed, I didn't even remember kind of arcing the background like that. I think I just did that just for fun when I was doing the outline. So it is a little bit different than these straight lines in the background. I think that's I don't know what I was thinking. I don't mind it right now, so we'll see. You can obviously very easily straighten those lines. You know, there's a part of me that just wants to get the face done right now, and then we'll feel some level of satisfaction. Okay, this is why I need to blow. Okay, I'm gonna blow dry it because I love just touching the surfaces of canvases, my own, not ones in museums or galleries. But then you see, I just start smudging paint here. So let's mute. Okay. So what I'm just thinking to myself, what should I do with actual, like, paint, or just like paint, as opposed to glazes, like painting versus glazing. And do I want to do glazing, or do I want to just do the whole thing without blending? I'll do glazing on here a little bit, maybe towards the end. Let's do the... This color is definitely not the right color, but doesn't make it the wrong color. It is a little close to this. I think what I do want is a bit more of a white, cool, grayish kind of thing. So I'm gonna alter that a little bit. Take some white paint. And I am going to put a little bit of glazing fluid in here. You could use some just matte medium if you wanted. I'm just putting it in to thin it so that I don't obliterate the color that was there. Because I don't mind it. It's just not quite exactly what I wanted, so... it's sort of gone the other way, hasn't it? That's okay. I mean, I'm going to put a outline around there. As long as it's not moving forward and competing with the foreground, that's fine. So let that dry. Let's maybe do his body next. Or the pants, I think, would probably be helpful. Okay, so let's see, let's take some of this warm blue and where should I do this? Maybe just over here. I take a bit of glazing fluid in there just to thin it down. Now the warm blue tends to be kind of transparent anyway. Let's take a bit of this gray. And we'll put it all over the whole pants. Okay. I'm just going to go back over and smooth out a few brush strokes, although I don't mind them being there. And then let's go over his outfit. Okay, that's good. It moves things along a little bit. It's not. It's a little bit kind of brushy, but we're gonna keep on darkening it as we go here. I could have maybe not gone. Maybe I could have even have left the rolled pant legs up. Maybe I could have, but I don't know. You can definitely see that there should be opposition between the spaces here. Now we've got all of these warmer colors here and the cool colors in the background, particularly these two blues. This one should be feeling like it is closer to us than the cool blue in behind. Laurie says, I really like the curved background. I thought it was in the original. And yeah, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I put that curved background in there is because I think I just wanted something a little bit more dynamic, so it wasn't just kind of this flat background. I see someone else reply, I'm not a spy, I'm not a spy, is the handle says, no one asks for your input, Lori. I asked for, I actually appreciate people's input, so I welcome people telling me what they think. It's a free space there, so feel if you want to share your input, you're welcome to share your input there. This is a free place for people to learn and express their to ask questions, and I certainly don't think there was anything wrong with what Lori said there. So yeah, I'm not sure, a little bit of a testy remark there, my friend. So we'll try to keep the chat nice and civil, please. So next, let's put in some. I guess I could change this blue. I think I'm going to do a little bit of glazing with a bit of the light blue, and I'll put a little bit of gray in it as well. So where should I do this? Let's do this right here. See, this is why I mixed up that gray, is that I can use it for many different purposes throughout the painting. Just going to blend it up here. And I may even put even more glazing fluid in here. Let's see what this, kind of go quite heavy with the glazing fluid. And we get a bit of a bigger brush here. And let's go over okay, and I'm going to do the other side here. And if, remember, you can always add some outlines in between things if you want. If you're not happy with the way certain things are turning out, outline is a kind of a nice, quick way to change things and clean up a an area between two colors where they meet. So let's see. A little bit different. What's interesting to me is like this color is so strange that I can see the camera, which is at a really low ISO sensitivity, is actually looks like it's having a little bit of problem computing this color, which actually I think is great. That makes me really excited, because that's something you sometimes hear painters talking about, is that the painting doesn't look, you can't photograph it. It doesn't. I remember I had a teacher in art school who would always talk about my paintings don't photograph that well. You have to see them in person. I did not get along with this teacher, so I just thought that was quite funny. I just was like, well, maybe they're just not that great of paintings to begin with. It is not uncommon to hear artists talk about, like, painters saying that, like, you know, because basically you're taking painting, as we're doing here, we've got multiple layers of color. We had a yellow, and then we put a cool blue with white, and then we glazed on top of it with a cool blue and gray. So we have 3 layers of color here, which our brains see simultaneously, and they're mixing together inside of our heads. But a computer or a camera is trying to see it, is also seeing it all at once and trying to translate it all into one pixel or many millions of pixels. And it's having a bit of a hard time kind of figuring out what pixels to put into this place. So I can see it kind of, I don't know if you could see it on your screen at home, but there's a little bit of this kind of movement in here, which I think is great, because again, that's like that shows you how dynamic a painting can become. Okay, so I would like to wrap up within the next hour at the most. So I'm thinking, what should I do next here? Maybe let's do the face, maybe? So for this painting, Diego Rivera is using some black. Now, I haven't used this black in a little while. So where should we put some black here? Because we'll put some black in the hair. Maybe we should do the skin tone once more before I do any of that. So let's... So I'm mixing another brown. This is just warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. All my 3 warm colors all together. And you know what? Let's just paint this whole face. I was going to try to do a few highlights, but the way that I applied that previous color was so thin that it was kind of streaky, so... So if we do that to the face, we're going to have to do that for the rest of the body, so that the hands and feet also match the face. Which is a good reason to do the whole body all together all at one time, rather than just get the face perfect and then move on to the feet, get the feet perfect and do the face. If you do that, then you run the risk of mixing slightly different skin tones throughout your painting, and then at the end you have like body parts that don't match other body parts. Which can be kind of deeply upsetting. It can be really frustrating, and then it becomes very, once they're all different, then it becomes also very hard to make any kind of adjustments. Okay. So, I do wonder if I could take that same brown, add more yellow, and just kind of do a quick little glaze down here in the oh, we got some. Yeah, so let's take some glazing fluid, get that on our brush, and now let's take some of this warm yellow, maybe even a bit more of it. That's a little bit too subtle. But I think can I put a bit of this up here, actually. I was going to put this in the mat. My mop brush or blending brush is leaving little hairs, or not hairs, it's almost like split ends are kind of coming off. There's always something, especially when you're using these cheap tools that never surprised. Just give that little bit of a radiating quality. We can even do another pass just a little bit closer to his body down there afterwards. But let's take a bit of this brown and get that in here. So I'm not putting this everywhere. Okay, we'll keep on going. We'll do another level of that shortly. I'm quite pleased that, you know, again, some of the colors are a little bit different, but that's I think what makes it kind of fun. So how about let's take the same glaze. I'm just going to go over some of these tiles and lighten them up or darken them. So I've just sort of ended up doing a bit of a checkerboard pattern there, inadvertently, but I kind of like it, so I'm just going to keep going with it. It's super subtle at this point, which is kind of nice because so far everything on this painting has been very bold, right? These bold, bright colors. So it's kind of nice to have something that is more nuanced in the same painting. That is very subtle, but we'll maybe brighten and darken and do a few more like that as we go. So I'm gonna blow dry all this because I've just got a bunch of wet glaze on here. So I'm gonna mute the microphone. Okay, so tea time. You know, I am taking a bit of the I'm confident by the time we're done, it's going to look really, really cool. So that's just the way cookie crumbles. So let's now dive into the face and start putting some details, maybe even brighten parts of the face up a little bit with this next little bit. In fact, we could even use that glaze to do light glazing on the face to brighten it. Now that I think about it, maybe we should do that right now. So we've got this brown. This is the color we used for the face. Just take a bit of, is there a bit of white that we can put in here? Okay, so I mixed that color. Let's just squeeze the paint off. And then let's get the glazing fluid and this color back on our brush. This is a little bit different. I usually kind of go the opposite, get progressively darker, but we can do the opposite. We can also lighten up as with a glaze as well. Sometimes it's not quite as effective, but in fact, let's zoom in. I don't know why I chose to kind of go so dark right off the bat, but I guess it just shows you that there's many different ways of doing the same thing, right? I guess that's an overlapping brush stroke that makes it look like he's got a bit of a tear coming down his face. A little bit on the... Wow, that's very subtle. I can see it a lot more on my side. It's definitely much more apparent, but so I'm gonna blow. And I'll just do one more pass with some glaze, and then I'll start outlining a little bit here. Okay. Now, while I've got this done here, it might be a kind of a good idea to do a bit of this, use the same color for a few highlights, let's say on the hands. Just a little bit of a highlight. And how about the feet? Not sure what these little chunky things are. So let's come back up to the face. Let's break out the... Actually, let's mix it up with a bit of a larger brush. So let's take this brown. I gotta mix up a bit more of it because we're running low. And I'm first going to do a version that has a lot more blue in it. And then we'll add a little bit of black to it. I don't typically put black in the paint, but since Diego did, we'll do a bit of it. So this is just warm yellow, warm red, and warm blue. And the more blue I put in here, the darker it gets. think we'll outline the eyes with this as well. Maybe I should have put some white in there. Maybe I'll do the white afterwards. Let's get the top in. So I'll do the top lip is darker. The bottom lip we'll leave like that. See how it starts kind of coming together, and there's been times where this painting has not really looked all that impressive because we didn't have any kind of outlines or really differentiation between some of these colors, and it looked just very undefined and vague. And now once we start giving it a little bit more contrast, it starts to kind of pull together. And it's one of those things that, you know, beginner artists, it really freaks them out, because I see it, because when I do this, when I teach in person, this is where I hear a lot of exasperated sighs of and you know, you just sort of walk over and you're like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. I think I might just leave early today. I'm like, oh, why is that? It's just, I don't think I'm having a good painting day. I'm like, oh, really? It looks really good. No, you're lying. Thanks, but obviously it's a bit of a disaster. And I say like, no, this is exactly what we would expect the painting to look like at this stage, right? Before we start putting the lines on and everything, of course it's going to look a little bit unfinished. So before I do any more, I'm just going to let's just get to this. Let's get some white. Put that off to the side here, and I'm just going to take a bit of this brown. Mix a bit, because I'm going to put this in the eyes, but I don't want to put just pure white here, otherwise it's just going to be too bright. You could see even in his painting, the whites of the eyes are not the same white as his shirt, right? Which is really, you know, bright, clean. If we want, we can brighten them up, but I think that's going to be fine. I might probably outline at least the top eyelid with black afterwards, but I think that's probably good. I'm going to take this same dark brown that we have, and let's just move down the body to the hands here. I was just yesterday, our daughter and I were walking around looking at getting some new brushes for this class, because it's been a year. I feel like It's okay to buy a new set of cheap brushes. Again, I have thousands of dollars worth of good brushes in behind me, but I've really tried my best to be able to limit myself to painting with materials that most painters can easily access. They might already have themselves. And I want to show people that it's not the tools that make the painting, it's the techniques, and understanding the techniques that even a great artist can make great paintings with the most basic, cheap materials that you can get virtually anywhere. That's not what art supply stores want me to say, because they want me to say, well, if you want to become a good painter, you're going to have to invest in thousands of dollars worth of art supplies. Otherwise, there's just no point. Or they do the opposite. They sell these like really these painter sets that are full of colors that I don't think you'll need ever, potentially. And it just I find it so I empathize with the beginner artist a lot, because I've been teaching beginner artists for so long that I know the frustration that can come with getting art supplies and all of the misinformation that exists out there. So I'm really trying as best as possible to demystify and clarify things for people. So I'm actually, the original's a little bit, oops. It's hard for me to see some of these details, so I'm actually just going to go back to my outline, because the original, and that's the highest resolution original I could find, by the way, as well. As I said, this painting is in a private collection. I don't know who owns it. I don't know where it is, what country it is. It could be in Mexico, it could be in the United States, it could be in Russia or Dubai. I have no clue. So, which is actually interesting, because you know, I don't know. Therefore, well, I guess this painting would be in the public domain. I was going to say who owns the copyright to it, but it's certainly in the public domain now. So this color, this dark brown that I'm using, I just added a little bit of glazing fluid in there just to help activate it, because they're almost out, and it's now kind of gone a little bit transparent on me, which is a bit frustrating. It's the same sort of thing that happens if you add water to your paint. It's going to get a bit transparent. But sometimes transparent is better than nothing. It means I've got to go over some of those lines a bunch of times. Now, if I look here. Mine is definitely going in a bit of a cartoony direction, to be honest, but let's come back up here. That's actually, this is kind of nice. I'm using this glaze to get this color down, and it's gone a little bit more transparent, but I can actually now use it to add a little bit more dimension onto the face here, such as on the side here. In fact, that on a bit heavy. Ah! So I just took a rag and just wiped some of this off. And I'll do that again in a moment after that dries. Maybe while that's drying, let's go down to the hands. Just gotta put more glazing fluid in there. So just sort of darkening the bottom sides of these fingers, and as the hand goes towards the sleeve in there. Again, this is just a warm brown with a little bit more blue in it to get it a little bit darker. It may not even be quite dark enough, but it's okay. We can keep on going, and we'll get it right as we go. I'm just going to come back up to the face and see if I can do this again. Okay. You know, well, I think I might darken that face a little bit more shortly, but for now it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. So next, actually, you know what? Or should I? I don't know. I might just leave the face like the. I don't know if I'm gonna put any more shading. I was just like, maybe I'll blow dry it right now. I don't know, I'm kind of digging it right now. So, but it's going to change when I put my black in here in just a moment. So, who knows? I've got my glaze ready to go. Should I want to use it? So, let's... Should I make that brown again? I think I'm just going to make that brown again just because it'll be easier. And I've got that paint is sort of, you know, it's been on there on the palette for a couple of hours, so it's not happy paint. So let's make some happy paint. The one color I haven't touched thus far, the only color I haven't touched, is my cool red. Everything else I've used a lot of. Oops. So I'm just mixing another brown using the warm blue, warm red, and warm yellow. I'm just mixing it down here. And then let's take some black. And I'm going to put this in here. Now you can see how quickly this color is just going to goes instantly very dark. I don't want pure black if I can avoid it. Pure black is just such a dominant color, and it sits so quickly right on the surface of the painting that you have to be really careful when you use black. So anyway, I'm just taking that black, getting some brown mixed in here, just so, because you'll, like, right now you're like, oh, it's been diluted a lot, but it is way darker than anything I've got on the painting at the moment. So if I put that black on there on its own, it would look like an alien presence. So let's start with the hair. Right, like, look how dark it seems, and this is not my pure black. Imagine how dark this would be if I just used actual black. Now, it looks like there was some glazing fluid and things in here, so it's color's a little bit transparent, not too bad, but how much does this hair go down here? darken his eyes. And those eyes, I think we're going to get even bigger, but I'm going to do the top eyelids with my dark brown with a little bit of black in it, just to see. So I have to be just careful as we widen his irises, not to go too wild. So I think I'll keep it like that for right now. I'll let it dry. I don't know if I'll do a dark black underline like he did. I have to think about it. But so let's move down. I'm just going to take this dark color and go like underneath. So I'm not going over everything, right? Basically, I'm kind of avoiding the tops where light is hitting the tips of the finger. Same sort of thing with these feet. Oops, let's get this on camera. Oops. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget there's even a camera here as I'm painting. So just the bottoms of the feet with this dark color. Now I can add more nuance here as we go, but let's just take. Oh, you know what? Maybe for the chin, let's take this dark color. Okay. Let's do the line between the lips. And then I'm going to put this dark color in the nostrils. Okay. I feel good about that. Not bad. Still a little bit of work to do, and we're getting close, but this paintbrush, the paint is flaking off, it's just getting everywhere. After today's episode, I'll just take some sandpaper and just clean that right off. It's just driving me bonkers. It's getting all over the painting. There's a few things. Laurie says, I wonder if painting this on magenta would give the sweet little boy a mischievous look, like the Hot House doll by Yashitomo Nara that we did a few months ago. That's a really interesting idea, Laurie. Yeah. You definitely would infuse him with maybe a subtle level of maybe malevolence or something, if you wanted to do that, for sure. And Paula says, I always told my husband my paintings are not great, or if my paintings aren't great, it's because the papers, there's a problem with the paper, not my skills that are causing the problem. Yeah, you can blame your paintings on your tools for sure. It's they don't have any, your canvas and paper don't have any feelings, so you can kind of get away with you can blame anything on your materials. That's funny. Okay. So, if I look at them, again, you could decide what to do with your painting at what point you want to stop. I think what I'm going to do, I want to outline with a darker yellow, warm yellow up here. Do darken down here, and obviously his clothes need some work. But I'm pretty happy with the face. Usually I leave the face until almost at the very end. But I think this painting sort of looked a little bit... I think there's probably some people tuning in and going like, oh, I don't know, why is this guy teaching people how to paint? So sometimes I feel like, oh, I better tackle that right now, because this painting was going through a phase, and now that that's done, I feel like I can tackle some of the other parts here. That's the thing of painting on YouTube, doing a live stream where anybody anywhere on earth can drop in. There's a bit in my mind, like, which is one of the reasons I love doing it, but it does cause like some anxiety at times of like, people are, I see the numbers going up and down of people viewing it, and so, and it's hard not to that's why I sometimes try not to look at the screen too often, because then it starts to get into your head a little bit, right? So let's take some of that brown, dark brown, and I got a little bit of black in there, which I'm not too happy with, because the black almost has a bit of a greenish quality. Some blacks anyway, and this one for sure does. So let's just I want it to look more brown and less black. There we go, that's the brown that I want. I'm afraid this is going to be pretty intense. So, let's just see if I can test it. Not bad. Not bad. So I don't think I'm going to outline the whole thing, especially because the way that he's done it is this outline is intended to show the front brim of the hat. So if we outline the whole thing, it's going to create a little bit of confusion. Like, we don't see the brim of the hat back here because it's behind him, facing away from us. So he's just outlining the kind of this top up here. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to blow dry it because I've got all of this black paint on here, and I want to be able to rest my hand on it with confidence. I'm not going to smudge everything. Okay, so still a little bit wet in places. So let's so we're gonna do this line around the top. I'm gonna start a little bit higher up. Look at that. Yeah, it's not bad. This is pretty good. So if I want it to be wider, I'm still just going to go all the way across. And then I'll come back and fine-tune things. So let's maybe zoom in a bit. I'm just coming a little bit further down because there was a bit of blue that was there. So I'm just using this outline to kind of cover up a tiny mistake that I had there. And then we'll come over to this side. And there was also another little mistake that is now gone. So now I know my minimum thickness as it kind of disappears around these edges, that I can kind of widen this this section a little bit. And I want it to be wider than it was on these edges, so that it's clear that we're looking at an edge of something. Otherwise, it could look like a halo or something, which is not bad, and there's certainly Mexican artists have used the sombrero like this in order to kind of because it kind of looks like a bit of a halo, this but I still want to ground it in some reality here. Okay. I'm also just going to take a bit of this, and you can see he's got a little bit of it right around here, right by the hair. So, because this is where the hair goes into, you know, the hat sits on the head, right? So you can see I'm painting a bit over top of my black. Remember I said I was going to come back to the black later? This is why. So I'll touch that up and we'll get even darker back there. That makes me happy. How about... Now I'm going to take a bit of glazing fluid. Not too dark, but dark enough. Let's see if I can make this work. That's a little bit too much. Okay. Use the same thing, just a bit of a wider brush here. It's still way too subtle, but it's good to kind of try it and see how it works. Okay, let's blow dry this again. I'm feeling really good about this one. Obviously, still got lots of stuff in the clothes to do. I want to darken on the ground there more, though. Okay. There's a few things I want to do. I think I want to do the background behind, like, do this line over here. Let's tackle that. I'm going to take this cool blue and cool red. Get a darker color. I'm just going to lighten it up a bit. Let's do that. Just turn this around the other side. Okay. I'm going to do something similar on the tiles now. Let's get let's take a cool red, since we haven't used any cool red. Let's take a cool red and warm blue. We'll make a bit of a purple. Yeah, let's get a bit of that, some of this grayish color in there. Because if we put that right in, it might be a little bit nuts. So we're just gonna pull it back into a bit, take some of the intensity out of that color. Where's some white? Let's take a bit of white in here just to make it a bit less intense. There's some yellow on that, which I think is going to be good. just a bit more. There we go. A bit more of a brownish purple. I don't know. Let's see. I'm just playing around here, having a little bit of fun. It's not quite the same as what I put up top there, but a little bit different. And how about I'll take some glazing fluid and just take this color. So I'm using a purple just because I want, you know, to have a little bit of fun with some of these colors. This area here is just sort of a bit of blah. Not that I'm saying Diego Rivera made any mistakes or anything. This is just, you know, I'm putting a little bit of my own spin and style on the painting. Because why not? After all, it's going in my house. I've got to live with it. So I'm making it to my own specifications. Okay. I haven't forgotten about the clothes yet. So, I'm just going to come back before this black dries up. Just take it and go back over the hair, especially where I had put a bit of that glaze from the hat there. Ah, where's this water dripping down the brush somehow? Darkening those eyes just a little, just putting a little bit more black in there. Not it, just because as that black dries, it might lose a little bit of its intensity, so that just helps make it pop a little bit again. Okay. If you're enjoying today's episode, remember to like and subscribe. If you want to leave a donation, they're always welcome and encouraged. I owe this whole show to those of you that have been generously supporting me throughout this process. So, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for your support. So I really do appreciate all of the assistance everyone has provided over the past year. Thank you, everyone. Once again, I appreciate it. Okay, I think I'm going to put a little bit of just fresh white back into a few places. And then I'm going to use, I might have to mix some gray again, a little bit of it. Let's use a small brush. I just want to tidy up a few places. I'm going to darken a few of these areas. It's just that if there's white here and there's some kind of sloppy stuff, it's a magnet for attention. Whereas you can kind of cover up, like I was kind of hiding a few mistakes I made earlier up in the sombrero. That's easy to do. But it's harder to get away with that kind of stuff down here on the sleeves, etc. So that's good. Just a little tiny touch-ups. So let's do the pants. Really, I mean, all I really need to do is the pants and the shirt, both of which can be done in glazes. So he's using black as well for the pants. Let me think. Do I want to use... I'm going to take some of this, I'm going to add a little bit of purple into the shadow. Yeah, I might do this with a smaller brush. We'll see. Okay. Okay, so that's the top half. That's his little pouch on the front of his pants. Oh, you know what? I just realized he's got this sort of bulging pocket here. I'm just gonna kind of ignore that conveniently. And his pants come. So these are the rolled up part of the pants, so I'll probably glaze that and lighten it up. Okay. So do that just a little bit differently than the way he did here. Okay, so we'll blow dry that, and then we'll do it again. We'll do another layer, maybe even we'll get there eventually here. 1 second. Okay. Now I think I will take a little tiny bit of black. That changes everything. Changes everything really quickly. Okay, so I mix that color. I'm just going to wipe my brush off, and then I can take that Okay. I'm gonna blow dry this, or actually, no, before I blow dry it, I'm gonna add a little bit of white and blue down here. So I'm just taking some warm blue and white, getting a bit on the, just do a quick little glaze here. Still needs to be a bit lighter. Let's just zoom in for a moment since I zoomed out for a while. Oh, I didn't even. Okay. Let's see. What can I do here? Okay. And I'll even just... take a bit... Okay, so it's just kind of cleaning up those. This is just like little tiny, insignificant work here, but it is looking really cool. But so what I've just done is I wanted to straighten up these the cuffs on the pant legs. I'll let that dry. While that's drying, let's work on the shirt. There's not a lot of stuff we're gonna do here, but what I do want to mix, let's zoom, oops, back out. I guess I could use this. What color is that? That's that purple. I could use this with white. I was going to mix just another gray again, but this will work just fine. In fact, let's put a bit more white into it because it's going to be very subtle. Everyone is focused painting. That makes me super excited. Lots of quiet painting happening. Okay. Where should we put this? Bit of a gray. Let's just zoom in. It's interesting. I noticed he didn't do much shading on the shirt. or at least what I see in the image. So just keep it pretty subtle. No need to overdo it. I just got a little bit more of that grayish purple into the color, just so I can get what looks like to be these cuffs of the shirt. Okay. Just going to give a little bit more darkness, dark blue underneath these hands. And then, I don't know, are we done? I probably should do a little bit of a shadow on the... yeah, I'll work on the shadow on the mat. And then I think we're done. Okay. Let's zoom back out. I'm just like having a lot of fun working on this one. I'm definitely taking my sweet time working on it. But it's a fun one. It's a kind of simple one in many ways. And simple paintings like this can be some of the funnest ones because it's not like I'm in an absolute race. Like, for instance, the painting I did just on Tuesday, the Thomas Cole one. There is so much detail that it's just like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm just frantically just trying to get 5% of this. You know, the painting was, we talked about how big that painting is and trying to cram it down into this 9x12 size versus working on a painting like this, which there's not a lot of things to do compositionally. There's not like 10 figures in here. We have one figure. So you can really slow down and tackle some of the more difficult, not even really difficult, but just spend some quality time in certain parts of the painting. So I think what I want to do is, if I just put a nice little shadow down here, I mean, there is a little bit, and he's got a bit there as well, but I think if I just start darkening down here, that would really be very helpful. So I'm going to blow dry things, and okay. I was picking at the canvas and I picked something right off, so it's gonna be dark. Like it was never there. And Olga's saying hello, looks good. Looks like I just arrived at the last, as the last strokes were being placed. I'll have to rewind later. Good to see you. So let's do a darker glaze down here. So we don't have to be too, in fact, I could, obviously black is the easiest thing. Let's think about what color we could put down here in the shadow. We could do a yellow, could be a brown, maybe a little bit more of a reddish brown, I think. We're not going to need much. Okay. That's nice. Okay, so I got a nice reddish brown. We're going to put some glazing fluid. I'm just going to do a bit of this. And then we'll off. Just gonna clean that brush right off. Where did I put my other? Okay. So which ways the light is kind of hitting from above, so we won't need that big of a shadow. Okay, so I'll just back out so you can see. I maybe should have just had it backed out the whole time, because it's pretty subtle, especially if you're up close. We're just kind of going to start darkening. I'm going to blow dry this, and then we'll darken closer and closer to the feet. So great question. Olga asked, are you thinking about reflected light when you work out shadow colors? I do. I absolutely really consider if there's light reflecting off the body or clothes, what those colors are going to be. I'm also thinking about like the just compositionally, especially in a painting like this, which is not really representational. There's an abstraction, a level of abstraction here, and so I what was I gonna say? I'll put this. Let me put this in here while I forget what I want to do. And I'll put a little bit of blue in here as well. This is pretty strong. This is a pretty strong shadow, but I also want to wrap up soon, so kind of going a little bit bold. On screen, that's looking really reddish. You can see in the original, he's got a bit of like some blue down in here, which is not surprising, like a complementary color to the reddish brown. So I'm gonna blow dry again. Okay. Yeah, I usually mute the hi lolly V. I usually mute the audio when I'm using the blow dryer, just so I don't blow out your ears. Okay, so let's see. So we have this yellow matte. I think I'm going to take a bit of the purple that I had here, and let's do a little thin glaze. Put a little bit of purple into the shadow. So just wipe that off. Coming out a little bit more. It's emphasizing the red, so I might just do a little bit of blue actually. Okay, so let's take a bit of warm blue. I'll just mix it into this here. Right, once again, just wiping that brush off, because otherwise it's going to be just way too thick, so I think that might be okay. And I'm just looking around thinking about giving a bit more, just a little bit more nuance on the matte, a little bit elsewhere on here. Pretty subtle. I don't know if that's showing up on camera at all. Olga asks, are you using the blue brush for blending? Yeah, this is called a mop brush, you know, like mopping the floor. And a mop brush is used for kind of blending things out a little bit. If you do like a lot of glazing, having a mop brush is really handy because it just sort of softens up the edges of the brush strokes. Okay, I think... Let's take a look here. I don't know if there's anything more I want to do here. I'm pretty happy walking away from it like this. So we get this out of the way. Yeah, I think that's okay. Olga asks, okay, so creating blending. Okay, so creating soft edges. Yeah, so if I put down a glaze, I'll still have the kind of the you'll still see the brush strokes in there. So I use the mop brush just to kind of soften out the glaze, and I've done that throughout this painting. Some other paintings a lot more so than I've done today, and it just helps. If you use the glazing fluid, it's sort of just thinning out, spreading it thinner and thinner outwards, so that you don't have the hard edge of where the brush hit the canvas. Trying to think of which paintings I've done a lot of glazing with. Like a lot of the more classical paintings I've done a lot of glazing with, like the Goya, the Titian, the Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring, all of which you can find in the various different playlists below. Retrato just means portrait. In case you're wondering, I didn't even mention that till the very end here. Ignacio. I had it right the first time. Ignacio. Oh. I'll put a little bit of white paint in there to fix the signature. This is one-year anniversary of the painting live stream. Made it all the way through an entire year of painting using all the cheapest brushes at the art supply store. Basically the cheapest paint that I could get. So we have painted 129 paintings. Let's clean that brush. So let's just put it on the pen to dry. Even the back of the paintings sometimes get a little bit of treatment, right? Okay, just before I sign off here, there's some things in the chat. Lolly V says, I think that looks great. I'm pretty new to the channel and I love these streams. Seeing the whole process, it's given me a lot more confidence about my own painting. That's awesome. That makes me super happy. It makes me happy to hear that they're helpful in some way to you. and that seeing the whole process from beginning to end, from a blank canvas to a finished canvas. Yes, sometimes it takes me longer than others, but there's no smoke and mirrors, there's no editing tricks. If I make a mistake, I fix the mistake. It's all warts and all from beginning to end. And I think sometimes seeing when I make a mistake how I recover from that especially is very helpful for some artists, some beginner artists, and even artists that have been painting for a while. And so I really, it's great to have you joining the channel, Lolly V. So make sure you join the Facebook page if you're on Facebook, and there's a link below, because we have an awesome community of very supportive artists out there. Upload your version of today's painting or another painting you might happen to be working on. You don't have to be following me painting along. I know a lot of people just tune in and paint and do their own things while they're listening to me, because every month we do a feedback episode where we take a look at your versions of the paintings I'm working on, as well as anything else that you've been painting over the past month. So we did one, what was it, a couple weeks ago? So we're coming up probably at the end of September. I can't remember. I have to look at the schedule for that. So, and that usually people find that particularly helpful, enjoyable. Good. It's good for some good fun, because I can actually interact with people and talk a little bit. I have a little bit more focus than when I'm working on the painting. Let me see. Wow. Olga says, nice. Yeah, ditto to what Lolly said. Really, really helpful. Thanks. I appreciate it. Wow, 1 year, and I just found your stream. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Paula says, happy first anniversary. Painting, Michael, thank you very much. Lolly says, happy anniversary. Olga, really appreciate all your efforts in helping others. It's brilliant. No smoke and mirrors, yes, and recovery, wonderful. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining me for painting along. We're going to continue our study of Diego Rivera, I think really one of the greatest artists of all time. I mean, all of these are great artists, but Diego Rivera has a whole special place in my heart. So tomorrow we're going to tackle this painting here. This is a detail from one of his most famous paintings, Sunday Afternoon in Alameda Park, which is a giant mural in Alameda Park in, it's not down, I guess not really downtown Mexico City. I've been there, I've seen it in person, it's fantastic. But we're going to focus on this section of it, really the most famous section of it, where we have Diego Rivera. It's a self-portrait of himself as a boy, with Frida Kahlo, his wife, who he married and then divorced and then remarried. We'll get more into their relationship in tomorrow's episode. And then this skeleton figure, which is obviously plays a prominent role in Mexican culture in Day of the Dead, which is coming up in October, right? So please join us for that. And then carrying on this little maybe macabre theme, on the weekend, on Saturday, I think it is, we are painting the famous Brown Lady, which is probably the most famous photograph ever taken of a ghost. Or maybe it's a hoax. No one is quite sure, but we'll have lots of chance to talk about ghosts and all that kind of stuff on Saturday. Woo! As we do something a little bit different in the Paint the News class, because it's 85 years since that famous photograph was taken. Anyway, we'll see you guys in a few days. Enjoy your evening. If you want to contribute to the show, there's a PayPal link in the description below. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when the new videos are being uploaded and when I'm live. If you're just sitting there on YouTube and you can't find me, hit the notification bell and you'll know, because it'll show up in your notifications. It's not going to email you, and you're not going to get spammed or anything. But anyway, that's what I do for all the subscribers that I want to follow. a little bit more closely than the thousands of other people that I'm subscribed to. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful night. We're going to see you guys tomorrow. So before I completely lose my mind, I'm going to sign off and get myself a little bit of dinner. Good night, everybody.